The major foundation of self-esteem is set up from birth to about 18 months. It is set up, the groundwork of it is set up as the child is treated like they're precious, and the parents take care of the child. Boundaries start happening about 18 months when the child comes up with that no to you and yes to me, which is the beginning of self-will, self-care. About the age of 3 on up, they have the mental ability to own their own reality, and as they get enough of their own reality on board, they can start knowing what their needs and their wants are and beginning to take care of some of those. And later on, as they get some facility in all these first abilities here, they begin to put a brake on expressing who they are and focusing on acting their age. So again, in terms of the effect on the developing child, what happens is that child abuse interferes with the child's natural process of growth and development. It impairs their developing sense of value or self-esteem, the internal sense of one's own preciousness. It prevents the formation of boundary. It interrupts with the expression of and the development of a child's sense of self or reality. It impedes the child's process of learning and how to know and take care of needing and wanting. And it interrupts the natural process of acting his or her age, which is the 5th core symptom, inability to express your reality moderately and age specifically. You see, the job of growing up is enormous. And one of the ways you can kind of track what I mean about this disease is to just look at the way children truly are. They're wonderful. They've got 3 parts of who they are that enable them to do the job of growing up. One is that they're very self-centered. They're very centered on the self. They are filled with energy and they easily adapt. Why do you think a child has those characteristics? Well, they have all self-centered because the only way they can eventually know the self is to be centered on the self and tracking it. So they've got to be centered on the self. Why do they have all that energy? Because it's a lot of work to grow up. They need that energy to do all they've got to do in order to grow up. They adapt easily. Why do they do that? They've got to be adapting because they have to constantly be in a state of changing or growing. What do we do in this culture with those 3 characteristics of the child? We tell them to sit down and shut up. Be quiet. Hold it in. Tell them to stop being centered on the self and start looking out at other people. That they're selfish, that they're focused on themselves. And we use their ability to adapt and change against them and force them into adapting and becoming who we want them to be as their parent or major caretaker in the interest of keeping us comfortable. One of the ways you can define child abuse or a dysfunctional family system is that it is a system that's set up to force the children to meet the needs of the parents. A functional family system is a system that is set up to the needs of the child. It is child-focused. In addition to other things, there is focus on the child and that the child is needy, wanting, dependent, immature, self-centered, and all that. That is known and that is taken care of. It is known that that is the way children are, and they're helped out of that so they can become an adult. Some other characteristics that children have is that they're very imperfect. They are about making mistakes. They are very dependent. They have to rely on other people to take care of them, and they're very immature. It is normal to be immature when you're a child. What do we do in this culture with that issue? Get the child's focus off the self onto other people. Get the child to sit down and shut up. Manipulate the child into being who we want the child to be. Demanding perfection from a child, denying them their dependency needs, and confronting them about being mature. Why would the adult need to do that to the child? Because they're little people in great big bodies. They are immature children in great big bodies trying to parent other children. See, there's 3 basic things a kid needs in a functional family system, and they are provided in a functional family system. They need nurturing, They need to be taken care of. Their needing and their wanting needs to be addressed. The child is nurtured, given time, attention, and direction, physical nurturing. They affirm the child. What's affirmation of a child means? It means that it's a statement to a child is, you are absolutely wonderful. You're not special, but you're precious. You are filled with worth. And I celebrate the fact that you exist and you're taking up time and attention and space and money and everything else in this family system. I celebrate you. I am happy you are alive. They provide the child with structure. That is the how to esteem yourself, how to have boundaries, how to own your reality, how to take care of your needs, how to take care of your wants, and how to control yourself. And they do that in a very respectful manner. Is that a big job? Yeah, it is. Have any of you parents noticed how much work that takes? Anyway, what happens is kids are attacked for who they are. They're attacked for their self-centeredness, their energy, their imperfection, their dependency, and immaturity. And in that, they lose their sense of value, and they certainly don't develop boundaries, which sets up this illness. Another thing that's really a sad thing to see happen for children that are used by their parents in this dysfunctional system is that the natural energy they need to grow up gets sapped several different ways. It gets sapped taking care of the parent. It gets sapped as the child has to not know that he or she is being abused. Mainly sapped through the different defenses that kids use not to know they're being abused. They're using defense mechanisms such as repression, suppression, dissociation, minimization, denial, and delusion. They're using those defenses not to know. That takes an awful lot of energy to use those defenses. I don't know if any of you have ever had a spontaneous regression. Anybody in here willing to admit they've had one of those spontaneous regressions? Yeah. When you got done having one, which is the way you retrieve dissociated data out of your unconscious mind, were you tired? Yeah. Exhausted. Exhausted. Takes a lot of energy not to know. So as we age and we lose the energy to not know, reality pops on our face and then we have to face it. It takes an awful lot of energy not to feel. You know, children can't feel in a highly abusive family because if they do, it makes them feel sick to feel. Because they're going to be feeling a lot of pain, a lot of fear, a lot of shame, a lot of anger. So they've got to shut down those feelings so they don't have to feel, because it's only in the feeling that reality really matters. So they shut down their feelings. Does that take energy? Yeah. See depressed little kids walking around? I don't wonder why they're depressed. I know they're being abused. Because it takes their energy and they do get depressed. But the child will grow up and then that disease is ever present. We are an abusive society. We are abusive to our children and we're abusive to one another. Really. It's kind of a negative message, but I want to share with you in recovery, it gets better. A lot better. You know, there's a lot of joy that comes for you when you're in codependency recovery and finally acting like an adult more than you're acting like a child. And when you start doing that, you will start taking charge of your life. And as you start taking charge of your life and living in action instead of reaction to what's going on in your life, you have a tremendous surge of power and joy. And it is wonderful. And as you notice yourself not abusing your kids anymore, but more being a parent to them, even if they are grown, there's a lot of joy that comes from that, and they get great relief when you grow up, you know. Now, I spend hours lecturing to people about what this all means when I'm having them get into codependency recovery. Again, I believe codependency is about being immature. It's about being a little person in a great big body. The reason why that happens is because a child who's now an adult was not raised in a family system that parented them into being an adult and instead retarded their growth and development. And so I lecture to people about what is abuse. They can go back into their history and see what happened to them to begin to gain an understanding of how what happened back here is impacting their life today and presenting them with these core symptoms I mentioned before. That's the beginning of recovery. It's very hard to do because the message is stop looking at mom and dad and what jerks they were. Focus on what's going on now in your life and forget the past. Do you know that that's not possible? Not until you found out what it was and how it's impacted you and expressed it, then you can move on. After you've gone through a significant grief and grieving period and gone through the processes or the stages of forgiveness, then you can let it go. In fact, you must, and go on with your life.